Okay, welcome back, guys. Welcome back to my channel. So this will be the third video, episode 3 of the Grind Hard series of IGCSE Business. And welcome back. And I'm very grateful for you guys to staying tuned to all the videos of business studies in IGCSE. So today we'll be talking about the chapter 2 in the business studies syllabus, which is the classification of businesses. So in this today I'll be mostly covering the economic stages, like the stage of economic activity or production, and then I'll be talking about the deindustrialization. Okay, this part, guys, I'll be talking in a separate video because this is not as important as the others. So yeah, so this is the deindustrialization part, and then finally I'll be covering the mixed economy. So this is what we're going to cover today, and let's get into the intro then, shall we? Okay, so let's start with the stages of economic activity. So there are three stages of economic activity, which includes the primary sector and secondary sector and finally the tertiary sector. Primary sector is where there is a woodcutter who does business, and then a secondary sector is where the furniture maker who manufactures the furniture from the woodcutter's materials or raw materials. The tertiary sector is the one sells the final product that was made by the secondary sector. So that is how these three stages go together and also are a part of the stages of production. So let's get into what the textbook exactly says. First of all, the definition of primary sector is that the primary sector of industry extracts and uses the natural resources of earth to produce raw materials used by other businesses. So from the definition you can easily notice that you could say the main keywords that you need to underline is that uses natural resources of earth and then raw materials. These are the two main keywords that you need to have. And then next up is the secondary sector's definition is that secondary sector of industry manufactures goods using the raw materials provided by the primary sector. So again, for this is the raw materials again, and then the manufacturers goods, that is also a key point, as well as that it was provided by the primary sector. That is also another word that you need to notice for when you write the exam. And then finally, the tertiary sector key definition would be is that the tertiary sector of industry provides services to consumers and other sectors of the industry. So this is the three definitions that the textbook has given on the stages of economic activity. Now let me explain to you what each of the thing is in a very simple term and give you example on it. Okay, so let's start with the primary sector, right? As I said earlier, a primary sector can be a woodcutter, or they could be a farmer, or they could be a fishing person, or a forestry extracting natural materials, anything like oil, copper, milk from farming, wheat, anything. So that is primary sector who extracts natural resources from earth. So the next stage is the secondary sector. This is where they do the production, so the manufacturing, like baking a bread in a bakery or assembling computer parts and making the final product. This is the important stage where they make the final good. So to make the final good, this sector is very important. So this secondary sector uses the materials from the primary sector and assembles and makes the final product, and it produces or manufactures, any key term can be used. So that basically is secondary sector. So let's take the example of the woodcutter, right? So after that person A has cut all the wood, and supply it to this manufacturing company, and the manufacturing company is producing your furniture. Let's say they are making a dining table or chairs or sofas, whatnot, from the just from the wood. Okay, so that is the secondary sector. So next up would be the tertiary sector, where they sell the good that they were received from the manufacturer or the production company. So here the tertiary sector is a retailer, right? So as a retailer, they sell the good to the consumer, to the direct consumer. So now, as we were talking about the furniture, right, let's take the example of IKEA, the famous brand in the world of furnitures and other supplies, right? So now the IKEA is a retailer who's gonna sell the chair that they got from the manufacturing company and the raw materials from the primary sector. So this is the job of tertiary sector of industry, which includes transport, banking, retail, insurance, hotels, hairdressing. All services provided is the tertiary sector to the consumer. So these are the three sectors of the economic activity. Okay, so next up we cover the de-industrialization and the changes in a sector importance. So for this, I would suggest you to just go through the whole thing, even the key info in the textbook, or also the other informations like the case study of the Bangladesh or whatever is given in the textbook of the newest version. Okay, I will just explain simply what de-industrialization is. As the textbook says, de-industrialization occurs when there is a decline in the importance of the secondary manufacturing sector of the industry in a country. So when there is like a problem or an issue where it has a declining rate in the industry of manufacturing, then that means it is deindustrialized in that particular sector of or a country. So in the UK, this happened in the 1970s, and now they are being a developed country. So some of the developing countries like South Africa, India are still is stuck with the primary sector and the secondary sector, and not focusing a lot on the tertiary sector. So that is the difference of in this. That is the difference of the developing country and the developed countries or economies, you could say. So this is the smaller version. So for if you want more on this, I don't think this is that important, but you can just go through the textbook and understand it further. Next, let's talk about the mixed economy. So mixed economy is where a country has both the private sector and the public sector. So private sector is like a privately owned by a person. Let's say a businessman owns a company, that's a private sector, whereas public sector is owned by the government or state of that particular area or country. So let's take two examples, right? So let's say furniture. Now for so many furniture. Stop. Sorry, guys. So let's go into another thing. Let's say a watchmaker. He has a business on collections of many prestige watch. So that company is owned by a single or a separate person, right? That is private sector, which is not involved by the government at all. Whereas a public sector is government owned, like let's say a gas station, a gas company, which is owned by the public and selling it to the public, and like it's owned by the government of that particular area, which sells directly to the public and businesses and organizations. So that's how it goes. So let me just explain what it is from the textbook. So the textbook says private sector is when the business not owned by the government. As I told, these businesses will make their own decisions and what to produce. Yeah. So the private sector, right, as it's an individual, they can think for their own and they make decisions by themselves. So they are not dependent on anyone else, and they make the whole profit. Whereas the public sector have a lot of discussion and decision making to do with all the authorities, and this money that they get is for the public, and they store it as a government fund. So that's how it is. And most of the goods from the public are either less cost, which does not involve profit, as it has the authority of giving the consumer the first priority over a profit. So most goods are free of charge for the consumers, like the health insurance and education service, because all of them are taxpayers. That is the money that already that they have been paying. So these services all are free. So that is a mixed economy. And then the last part of this chapter is the new changes that has arisen in the mixed economies, where you could see a term called as privatization, or you could say, yeah, the word privatized is when like the public company, right? So the public company has now also used, like, let's say, let's take an example. So as the gas station was already publicly owned but it was not running properly, so a private company helps the government for to and take over the public company. So that is called privatized. I don't think if it is in the textbook, but it's a very important thing. So stay tuned for the next episode. Goodbye. Cheers, guys.